An airborne firewood log crashes against the window frame by Collie's head. She shrinks away from it with a mousy squeak.
"Not another word of that childish crap,"
shouts Gretchen.
"Where is Shauna then?"
sobs Collie.
"Where is Bly? What happened to them?" "Maybe Bly's snapped, and she's brought us out here to kill us all. She brought up the Wendigo, and it was her idea to split up and search."
"Bly would never hurt us, and she sure as hell wouldn't hurt Shauna."
"Well, she is a crazy bitch who throws knives at people. She has been acting nuts ever since we arrived. You would rather believe there's a mythical monster watching us from those woods, waiting for us to separate again." "Well, it makes more sense than Bly sitting out there in a blizzard with no fire."
They sit in silence for a moment. Gretchen scowls at her phone as she dials another visitor center. Collie, lip quivering, resumes staring out the window.
"Paradise Jackson Visitor Center,"
says a park ranger voice after the fourth ring. Gretchen nearly hits the ceiling.
"Yes, hello? Mount Rainier National Park is currently closed. If you would like to leave a message..."
Gretchen hangs up. With a long sigh, Stella pulls her legs in and rests her chin upon her knees. She rocks back and forth, gazing into the fire.
"Why don't we just drive out of here?"
she says after a minute.
"We've got keys. Just drive home and tell somebody what happened."
Gretchen stretches out on the floor.
"I don't know the condition of the roads. If we crash, we will be walking across miles of forest and blizzard. Maybe Shauna and Bly could survive a brutal hike like that, but not three pampered bitches like us."
"So how long till someone comes back to check on us?"
says Stella. Gretchen shrugs.
"I figured they would have come by now."
Stella curls into a tight little ball as she gazes into the fire.
"What if..."
she starts to say, then pauses as if the words are painful to get out.
"What if he already did come check on us? What if he disappeared too?"
Gretchen says nothing.
"What if the Rangers went first?"
Gretchen still says nothing. All three girls nearly jump out of their skin as something solid hits the front door from the outside. The door creaks and groans as it slowly bends in its frame, flexed inward by some powerful force. The girls sit motionless for a minute, waiting for the door to burst off its hinges. And then suddenly, it returns to its normal shape, rattling slightly. Standing quickly on her feet, Gretchen moves to the door just as Collie looks back out the window. She erupts in an insane frenzy of screaming and backs away from the window, unable to tear her bloodshot eyes from it.
"Is Lukamati!"
she babbles between screams.
"Mati!"
Gretchen and Stella run to her as she crashes against the opposite wall and sinks to the floor and continues to scream until she faints. Stella lays her friend on her back and fans her pale, sweat-drenched face in the hopes of reviving her while Gretchen runs to the door and throws it open. However, there is nothing beyond it but endless snow, endless forest, and the endless night. Stuck, blade first, in the center of the door is Bly Bearheart's hunting knife.
"I couldn't stop her,"
sniffles Stella as she kneels over Gretchen's sleeping bag, wearing her snow gear. Gretchen squints her sleepy eyes at the morning light. She sits up and halfway says,
"What?"
"Collie,"
says Stella with a sob.
"She's gone. I woke up to her crying and just caught her running out the door, saying she had to get away from this evil place. I got up and ran after her, but she was already gone."
Gretchen throws on her coat and follows Stella outside, where the storm has lulled into a breeze. Last night's heavy snow has nearly erased all traces of yesterday's tracks. Only one fresh set of tracks can be found, leading in great strides from the front stoop of the cabin. They led 25 feet from the cabin and stopped. That nagging feeling again. Gretchen watched the surrounding forest, and it seemed to watch her back. Beside her, Stella cried and sniveled quietly to herself.
I swear, I wasn't drunk or anything. She was just gone. I was sober, I swear to God.
Gretchen half hears her as she finds herself staring at the odd spruce tree in the distance again. Its colorful fruit clustered near the top of its trunk. Still watching the tree, Gretchen wraps one arm around Stella's shoulders and pulls her sobbing friend into a hug, kissing her on the forehead.
"We'll chance the road," she said. "And do not leave my side, all right?"
The Jeep moves at a moderate speed as Gretchen gets accustomed to driving on the snow-blanketed road through Mount Rainier National Park, toward the exit that will take them back to civilization. Twice she's narrowly avoided skidding off the road and straight into a ditch.
"Probably shouldn't mention that my license was suspended again,"
says Gretchen. The girls manage to laugh a little. The Jeep skids and bumps and wobbles around every icy turn as it gets closer to the river crossing. Gretchen finds herself watching the skies instinctively, damning Bly under her breath as she searches for signs, markers, or any indication that she is indeed going toward the highway and not to another area of that doomed park.
The hell is that?
Says Stella, pointing toward the very thing Gretchen is now staring at high up in the trees. The distraction nearly causes her to veer off the road around the next turn. Gretchen slows to a stop and gets out. Stella, asking what the hell she's doing, follows suit. They stare up to the top of the spruce tree, where dangle the mystery objects Gretchen had seen twice before and failed to identify. She used her phone's camera app to get a closer view of them. Sacks was the word she was looking for. Jackets and coats tied into makeshift sacks, hanging apple-like from the highest branches nearly 90 feet up. There were 6 in total. 3 of them once belonged to park rangers. Gretchen and Stella recognized the other 3 right away. Dark green, blue, and purple with a white fuzzy collar.
Are those ours?
Says Stella. Gretchen's feet want to go towards the driver's seat. The squirming feeling inside of her gut wrenches upwards towards the jackets.
Gee,
says Stella, backing towards the Jeep.
Come on, G. Let's go.
Gretchen is only vaguely aware of her friend's words as she watches Shauna's dark green jacket sway gently in the breeze, the snow clinging delicately to the fabric. She finds herself choking on a sob, covering her face with one hand. When Gretchen doesn't respond to her name, Stella approaches her and gently puts her hand on her friend's shoulder.
It's gonna end like this, isn't it?
Gretchen says in a strangled voice.
With me being an asshole, especially to her. Cutting her down, calling her all that vile shit, all for trying to be nice.
Gee, don't,
says Stella.
It's okay.
Gretchen looks at Stella, half blinded by tears, mewling.
They knew I loved them, right? I mean, I just do everything the mean way. I just do. It doesn't mean that I don't love all of you. You all knew that, right?
Sure,
says Stella. Gretchen stares up at the jackets and wipes the tears from her eyes. She takes a deep breath and releases it.
Sure,
she says flatly. She grabs the lowest of the spruce's branches, planting one foot against the bark.
Gee,
says Stella.
Leave it.
I owe him this much,
says Gretchen.
It might be all we ever see of them again, and I have to take him with.
When she had a firm grip, Gretchen started climbing, ignoring the melting snow dripping in her eyes from the branches above. She couldn't remember when she had last climbed a tree. The tree in her yard seemed so tall as a child, impossibly tall. A shrub compared to this tree, a fern. 10 feet up the tree, she hears Stella say from the base of the trunk,
"You're gonna break your neck, stupid!"
Gretchen ignores her and keeps climbing, more swiftly as she gets the hang of it for the first time in 10 years. She makes it 30 feet up the tree, then 40, then 50, remembering never to look down. The strong breeze rarely threatens her foothold. It could accelerate to brutal, sweeping gusts at any minute. And then what? Her breath comes in narrow wheezes, and she curses the cigarettes in her jacket pocket. 60 feet. She can see the stitchwork of the jackets overhead with her naked eyes. She can't see the ground in her peripheral vision anymore, just trunks and leaves, and the distant mountains suspended in the air. The icy droplets keep landing on her face, and now they're running into her eyes. She pauses, steadies herself, wipes the moisture from her face, and reaches for the next branch. She stares long and hard at her hand, smeared red. The chill of the winter air slithers under her coat and across her skin. She catches the next cold droplets on the same hand. It runs deep red down her palm and splatters on her wool collar. The harsh, metallic stench suddenly registers in her nostrils. The droplets are coming from Shauna's bundle, seeping through the stitches now and then as it sways to and from. The insane notion of a squirrel hoarding nuts popped into Gretchen's head. An animal-like sound rolls out of her chest. Her descent is a chaotic rodent-like scurry. She slips often, narrowly catching branches with her flailing arms to keep her head above her feet. She almost doesn't notice the impact when she finally lands at Stella's feet. Her body doesn't register the pain from all the scratches and bruises. From the rib, she knows she's fractured. The moment she's on the ground, she scrambles and slides across the road on all fours to the trees on the other side. There she vomits and sobs back and forth for a full minute. Stella's frightened questions entirely unnoticed. When Gretchen's senses returned, fear was the first in line. She backed against the nearest tree and stared with insane rolling eyes at the dangling bundles. Stella kept asking if she was all right, asking if she hurt herself, telling her she was bleeding. "Not my blood," Gretchen wanted to say, but her tongue had turned into ice, and all she could do was make whimpering animal sounds. She threw her hands over Stella's mouth and shushed her, smearing blood on her face. The girls stood there in silence for several minutes, listening. Just the rustling of the trees, the low, steady howl of the wind, and the hum of the idle jeep. "Move," wheezes Gretchen, and races around the jeep to the driver's side. She slips in the sleet while reaching for the door and face plants onto the cold, wet road, snarling from the stabbing pains in her right side that suddenly began to register. Ribs cracked, shoulder tendons strained and spasming. The wind picks up briefly and washes goosebumps across her entire body, wrenching her stomach in the death stench of the forest. For a brief moment, the road is bathed in shade, as if the sun were blinking. The awful smell gone by the time Gretchen scrambles to her feet and throws herself behind the wheel. Her hand is on the clutch when she realizes that Stella is not with her. The passenger door is open, but Stella isn't there. Gretchen whirls around her seat in one way, then the other. She checks the mirrors, she checks the windows, she checks everything she can without getting out of the Jeep. Stella is gone. Something the size of a bowling ball forms in her stomach and rolls its way up to her throat. It bursts out of her mouth with an uncontrollable torrent of weeping. Her head falls against the steering wheel as sobs rack her body, her hands beating the dashboard again and again, seemingly on their own. In the next minute, pain and survival instinct slap her across the face, and she's putting the Jeep in gear and pressing the pedal to the floor. She had driven another half-mile across a slippery, uncooperative road before she came to the massive spruce tree splayed across it like a police barricade. The Jeep had skidded to a stop perpendicular to the road, the driver's door pressed against the tree trunk, and it had been sitting in that position for the last 3 minutes with the engine off. Provided she didn't get the tires stuck in the mud flanking the road, she could probably drive across the park to another exit and be home before dinner. Probably. But she won't. That path will be blocked as well by the time she reaches it. If she reaches it at all. Which she won't. She's the last one, and she can't run fast enough. Nobody can run or drive or fly fast enough. She can't deny it anymore. Not after seeing those bundles. Not after witnessing the sight before her now. She knows what frightened Bly out of her wits and drove Coley utterly insane. It could have taken them all in one easy sweep, but that would spoil the fun of watching its quarry run in terrified circles each time it snatched one away. Gretchen sat in the driver's seat of the addled Jeep, watching in silence, shuddering in resignation as a gangly, bone-white arm, the size of a redwood tree, rises from the forest, casually reaching to the top of the bundle tree with a gnarled hand as big as the Jeep. It lovingly adds Stella's bright green bundle to its colorful food hoard. Then the arm ducks out of sight once again. The Wendigo remains crouched among the snow-showered trees, where she can't see it. Even though it knows she knows it's there, watching her reaction with its giant orange eyes, eagerly gnashing its gravestone-sized teeth, stinking of blood and ancient decay. The woods are calm. The only sounds to be heard are the rustling of the trees and the low, steady howl of the wind. As the snowfall thickens, the forest landscape becomes a beautiful, white, mocking portrait of serenity. Gretchen closes her eyes and waits.